1995, before the era of viral hashtags and instant cancellation, Hollywood in the 90s was a different beast, brutal, yet governed by a very specific set of unspoken rules. And at the center of this universe sat a man who seemed untouchable, Hugh Grant. Look at him. He was a definitive golden boy. Following the massive success of 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Grant wasn't just an actor. He was a cultural export. He perfected the persona of the stuttering Englishman. Charming, floppy-haired, self-deprecating, and utterly harmless. He was dating Elizabeth Hurley, a woman whose beauty was so legendary she could make a safety pin dress world famous. They were the it couple. He was the it boy. But in the shadows of the City of Angels, perfection is often a precursor to a crash. June 27, 1995, a humid night in Los Angeles. Grant was at the absolute zenith of his career. In just a few days, his first major American blockbuster, 9 Months, was set to premiere. 20th Century Fox had bet tens of millions of dollars on him being the next global A-lister. The pressure was tectonic. Instead of a victory lap at a gala, Grant took his rented white BMW and drove east towards Sunset Boulevard. This wasn't the glitzy side of Sunset. This was the corner of Courtney Avenue, a known red light district. He pulled over for a woman named Divine Brown. A $20 transaction. He didn't know that the LAPD's Vice Squad was watching. When the police knocked on that car window, they didn't just find a movie star in a compromising position. They found the wreckage of a multi-million-dollar public image. The dark question, why? He had the world at his feet and the most beautiful woman on his arm. In our dark society analysis, this is a classic case of self-sabotage. By engaging in such a grimy act, Grant effectively shredded the nice guy masked Hollywood had forced upon him. The next morning, the mugshot hit the wires. Visual, zoom into the mugshot. Grant, in a striped sweater, looking startled, vulnerable, and deeply humiliated. This wasn't just a headline. It was a cultural reset. The tabloids, The Sun, the Daily Mail, National Enquirer, savage him. Headlines like Hugh's shame were everywhere. The public felt betrayed, not because of the act itself, but because the illusion of the polite British gentleman had been shattered so cheaply. Grant's PR team in the studio faced a binary choice. The coward's exit, go into hiding, claim sex addiction, or issue a cold lawyer-vetted statement. This is what 99% of stars do. The frontal assault, step into the line of fire, and admit everything. With 9 months on the line, the stakes couldn't be higher. One wrong move, and Hugh Grant would have been a footnote in Hollywood history. 2 weeks later, Grant kept his scheduled appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Everyone expected a cancellation. Who would dare face a live audience after such a tawdry arrest? Grant walked out. He didn't look like a defiant star. He looked like a man who had been through a meat grinder. Jay Leno asked the question the whole world was thinking. What the hell were you thinking? Grant looked at him, hesitated with that trademark stutter, and said, I think you know in life what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing. I did a bad thing. There you have it. This was a masterclass in absolute candor. He didn't blame booze or stress. He took the hit. He used his existing persona, the bumbling, honest Brit, to make the apology feel unscripted. In 10 minutes, he transformed from a pervert back into a human who made a mistake. The audience didn't just forgive him. They cheered for him. By the end of that night, Grant's approval rating soared. 9 months became a box office success. He didn't just save his career. He created the modern crisis management blueprint. If you're going to fail upwards by being the first person to call yourself out. The image of Hugh Grant's mugshot didn't just travel, it detonated. In the pre-Twitter era of 1995, a scandal of this magnitude relied on the physical weight of newsprint. And that morning, the world's printing presses were screaming. You have to understand the specific brand of irony here. This wasn't a rock star caught with a mountain of illicit powder. That would have been on brand. This was the man who played the quintessential, stuttering, polite English gentleman. He was a personification of proper, and yet there he was, caught in a $20 transaction on a grimy sidewalk with Divine Brown. The contrast wasn't just shocking, it was farcical. It was a dark comedy written by the universe itself. As the sun rose over Hollywood, The boardrooms at 20th Century Fox were in a state of absolute, unmitigated panic. They had invested tens of millions of dollars into 9 months, a family-friendly romantic comedy designed to cement Grant as the next global A-lister. Now, their leading man was a punchline. The marketing department saw their billion-dollar investment evaporating in real time. In the cynical world of high-stakes cinema, a star's purity is a financial commodity. Grant had just devalued himself to zero in a single night of self-sabotaging impulse. The industry vultures were already circling, preparing the obituaries for a career they assumed was permanently biologically retired. But the media circus was only one half of the nightmare. The other half was walking through the doors of a luxury villa in London, Elizabeth Hurley. At the time, Hurley and Grant were the undisputed royalty of the red carpet. Their relationship was a cornerstone of his public persona, the stable, glamorous, and seemingly perfect union. When the news hit, the world waited for the explosion. They expected a high society divorce, a public shaming, or at the very least, a dignified disappearance. Instead, what the public got was a masterclass in elite composure. Hurley didn't run. She didn't issue a frantic statement. She stood by him with a cold, aristocratic defiance that confused the tabloids. Why? In the Society Noir view of the world, loyalty at this level is rarely just about love. It's about the preservation of a collective empire. Had she left him that morning, the scandal would have been fatal. By staying, she provided a psychological shield. She forced the public to ask, if his own beautiful girlfriend can forgive him, who are we to judge? It was a calculated, high-stakes gambit that turned a private betrayal into a public shield. Then came the toxic catalyst, the Jay Leno show, July 10th, 1995. This is the moment where the dark society logic of crisis management changed forever. Most PR experts would have advised Grant to go into hiding, to check into a wellness retreat, or to issue a cold, lawyer-vetted apology through a spokesperson. They would have told him to wait for the storm to pass. But Grant, or perhaps a very brilliant shadow cabinet of advisors, realized in the age of the spectacle, the only way to kill a monster is to look it in the eye and laugh at it. He kept his appointment with Jay Leno. It was the most watched television event of the year. Imagine the atmosphere in that studio. The tension was so thick it could be dissected with a scalpel. When Grant walked out, he didn't look like a defiant celebrity. He looked like a man who had spent 2 weeks in a psychological basement. He was rumpled. His eyes were tired, and he leaned into his floppy-haired Brit persona with desperate intensity. He knew he was walking onto a digital guillotine. Jay Leno, sensing the blood in the water, didn't hold back. He asked a question that resonated from the suburbs of London to the hills of Hollywood. What the hell were you thinking? This was the pivot point. Grant had 2 paths. He could have made excuses. He could have blamed the pressure of fame, the loneliness of being away from home, or even a momentary lapse in mental health. That is a standard Hollywood playbook, the victim narrative. But Grant chose the path of the polished rogue. He looked into the lens and effectively said, I have no excuse. I did something bad. I am a fool. It was a brilliant piece of psychological theater. By refusing to offer a complex explanation, he left the critics with nowhere to go. You can't argue with a man who is already hitting himself over the head. He weaponized his own embarrassment. He turned his shame into a shared joke with the audience. He wasn't the pervert on Sunset Boulevard anymore. He was a naughty boy who got caught. It was a subtle but violent shift in the narrative. He didn't just apologize. He performed an autopsy on his own ego in front of millions. The response was instantaneous. The ratings were astronomical, but more importantly, the sentiment shifted. The Society Noir machine had successfully pivoted the public's emotion from disgust to pity, and then finally to affectionate amusement. He had successfully bypassed the moral outrage of the masses by simply being the first person to call himself an idiot. However, behind this honest performance lay a much darker realization. Grant had discovered that in the world of the elite, the truth is a tool, not a virtue. He used absolute candor as a weapon to protect his career. The studio bosses at Fox breathed a sigh of relief. The stock price of his reputation began to climb. He had survived the freefall. But as he walked off that stage, The man who had entered the studio was gone. The innocent golden boy had been replaced by something much more cynical, much more self-aware, and infinitely more dangerous. He had learned that he could survive a disaster if he managed the optics correctly. He had learned that the public doesn't want perfection. They want a performance of penance. But as the flashbulbs continued to pop in 9 months, prepared for its premiere, a new shadow began to grow. Because in Hollywood, when you learn how to manipulate the truth this effectively, you don't just save your career. Bureaucratically, you sell a piece of your soul to a machine that keeps the cameras rolling. The Icarus of the 90s hadn't crashed. He had simply learned how to fly with burnt wings. But as the cheers faded, the real question remained. What happened to Divine Brown? While Grant was being rehabilitated on national television, the woman at the other end of the transaction was being erased. The systemic inequality of the scandal began to show its teeth. One was a star with a multi-million-dollar PR shield. The other was a disposable character in a celebrity's redemption arc. The stage was set for a much longer, much more complex game of shadows. In the immediate wake of the Jay Leno interview, the Hollywood machine didn't just forgive Hugh Grant. It canonized him as the patron saint of the honest mistake. The film 9 months opened to a staggering $12 million in its first weekend, proving that in the economy of attention, infamy is often more profitable than virtue. Grant had successfully navigated the digital Scylla and Charybdis of public outrage. But while the industry celebrated his bravery for appearing on a talk show, the darker machinery of systemic inequality was just beginning to grind. To understand the absolute coldness of the Society Noir, we must look away from the glittering lights of the premiere and back toward the woman who shared that mugshot, Divine Brown. While Grant was being toasted with champagne for his courageous apology, Divine Brown was facing the full, unlubricated weight of the American legal system. She was sentenced to 180 days in jail for engaging in the very act that Grant had effectively turned into a lucrative career rebranding exercise. This is the central, sickening irony of the 1995 scandal. The elite can buy their way out of crisis with a well-timed joke and a floppy haircut. The marginalized are simply processed by the machine. Divine Brown didn't get a late-night talk show slot to explain her lapse in judgment. She got a prison cell. Grant eventually paid a fine and underwent an AIDS education program, but his biological retirement was officially canceled. He returned to the UK not as a pariah, but as a survivor. However, the psychological fallout of the incident began to manifest in a very specific, very cynical way. If you look at Grant's career post-1995, you see a man who slowly, methodically murdered the golden boy persona that had nearly destroyed him. He didn't just stop playing the stuttering romantic. He began to despise the very idea of him. He transitioned into roles that felt like a middle finger to the audience that had once demanded his purity. From the toxic, manipulative Daniel Cleaver in Bridget Jones's Diary to the sleazy, opportunistic private investigator in The Gentleman, Grant started playing versions of himself that were stripped of the polite English gentleman veneer. It was as if he was telling the world, "You wanted the real me? Here he is, selfish, cynical, and utterly bored with your expectations." This is the Icarus final evolution. Most who fall from the heights of fame spend the rest of their lives trying to climb back up to the same pedestal. Grant realized the pedestal was a trap. He decided to stay in the shadows, weaponizing the public's knowledge of his shame to build a new kind of power. He became one of the industry's most vocal critics of tabloid culture, turning his personal trauma into a political crusade against the very media outlets that had feasted on his mugshot. But let's perform a forensic autopsy on that crusade. Was it a genuine moral awakening, or was it the ultimate act of high-stakes revenge? In the Society Noir, these two things are often indistinguishable. By positioning himself as a victim of a predatory press, Grant effectively rewrote history. He shifted the narrative from a man caught in an illicit act to a man persecuted by an evil industry. It was a brilliant, decades-long psychological takeover of his own legacy. He didn't just survive the scandal, he colonized the memory of it. Meanwhile, back in the forgotten corners of the narrative, Divine Brown's life took a different trajectory. She eventually used a small amount of money she made from selling her story to the tabloids to put her children through school, survival strategy in its own right. But she remained a permanent footnote, a disposable catalyst in the great redemption of Hugh Grant. The world moved on, but the systemic gears that crushed her while elevating him remained perfectly greased and operational. As we look back from the 2020s, the 1995 incident serves as a blueprint for the modern celebrity apology. Every time you see a star post a tearful video on social media or sit down for a tell-all interview after a massive failure, you are seeing the ghost of Hugh Grant's Jay Leno appearance. He taught the elite that the public doesn't want the truth. They want the feeling of the truth. They want a performance of humility that allows them to feel superior for a moment, so they can go back to being fans and next. Grant proved that you can commit the ultimate sin in Hollywood, shattering the illusion, and still come out on top, provided you are charming enough to tell a joke while you're being executed. He didn't just win. He exposed the fact that the moral standards of the public are incredibly flexible when the entertainment is high enough. The sun didn't melt his wings. He simply learned how to use the heat to forge a new, much harder exterior. Today, Hugh Grant is more respected than ever. He is the elder statesman of British cinema, a man who survived the tabloid wars and came out with his fortune and his wit intact. But the shadow of Sunset Boulevard never truly disappeared. It's there in every cynical smirk he gives a journalist, and in every role where he plays a man who knows a secret he isn't telling. He is the ultimate survivor of the Society Noir, a man who looked into the abyss of a $20 scandal and realized that the abyss was actually a mirror. He didn't change the world. He forced the world to change its definition of him. And in the dark, cold hallways of power, that is the only victory that truly matters. The case of Hugh Grant isn't a story about sex or a mugshot. It's a forensic study of how wealth, charm, and a brilliant understanding of human psychology can turn a devastating social collapse into a strategic triumph. It reminds us that for the elite, a scandal is just a high-stakes transaction, and if you play your cards right, you can always buy back your soul at a discount. Stay with us as we continue to dissect the rotting, glamorous heart of the elite. This is Society Noir, where the lights are blinding, but the shadows tell the real story.